decapitating the country's government. It was now time for Malik Ambar to take to the main stage. In honor of his sultana, he pledged his fidelity to the Sultan. The Deccan was his home, and he would not let it fall. With Ahmednagar's rightful heir in captivity and its army in disarray, Ambar took up the Herculean task of piecing together the tattered scraps of a nation while fending off Mughal expansionism. Fortunately, he had never stopped preparing for war. By 1596, his relentless raids on Mughal territory had brought 3,000 soldiers to his side. By 1600, this number had swelled to 7,000. Persians, Turks, Habshis and Marathi Hindus all joined the Abyssinian commander for plunder and freedom. The Mughals' conquest of Fort Ahmednagar granted them a tenuous hold on the Sultanate's capital city. Nevertheless, they found further ingress into Ahmednagari lands consistently foiled. Realizing he could never take the empire head-on, Ambar employed the tactic he called Bagi Giri. The native Marathis in Ambar's army were legendary for their deadliness as light cavalry. Once his scouts had informed him of a Mughal position, he deployed the mounted Hindu warriors to strike like lightning, destroying food and water supplies and harassing Mughal soldiers. The imperial forces, over-encumbered with their heavy cannons and lumbering war elephants, simply could not keep up, and without provisions were forced to retreat. Ambar had turned the Mughal army's greatest strength, its size, into its greatest weakness. Even while fighting a guerrilla war, Ambar still had a government to rebuild. Deccani nobles could never accept an African as their king, but Malik did not need a crown to rule. From neighbouring Bijapur, he fished out a young heir of the Nizam Shahi family and installed him as Sultan Murtaza Nizam Shah II. Ambar offered the new sultan his daughter in marriage, tying himself closer to the royal line. As expected, the Oromo was appointed as Ahmednagar's regent minister by the puppet king he had installed, making him the de facto ruler of the revived sultanate. From 1600 to 1610, Ambar walked on a tightrope, balancing war with the Mughals with the inherent perfidiousness of Deccani politics. In 1603, he put down a rebellion launched by 3 of his officers, all while feigning a treaty with the Mughals so that they would not take advantage of the situation. 1605 saw the death of Emperor Akbar, who was replaced by his son Jahangir. The new Mughal sovereign launched campaigns into the Deccan with renewed vigour, but the effectiveness of Ambar's Bagi Giri kept him at bay. Jahangir would struggle fruitlessly against the Abyssinian for decades, eventually growing so infuriated that he ordered an imperial portrait of himself shooting a decapitated Ambar in the head. This painting remained forever a fantasy, for the emperor would never capture his cunning foe. In 1610, Ambar was subject to more court intrigue. Up until then, the puppet on Ahmednagar's throne had been a compliant stooge. Ambar's daughter was but one of Sultan Murtaza's many wives, and one of them, a Persian woman, had since turned him against the regent minister with hushed words of sedition. Once he caught wind of this, Ambar had both the wife and the sultan swiftly assassinated, installing the 5-year-old Burhan Nizam Shah III to the throne. No one would threaten the Malik's control, especially not the sultans whose power came only by his accomplishments. Later that year, Malik's forces stormed and occupied Fort Ahmednagar, seizing it from the Mughal garrison. Galvanized by the string of victories that followed, Ambar moved Ahmednagar's capital closer to the Mughal border. In 1612, a treaty was secured with the empire, and the Abyssinian potentate was afforded time to build up his new city and secure stability in his realm. Over the next decade, commerce flowed into the new capital, which today is known as the city of Aurangabad. Ambar worked tirelessly to improve the infrastructure of his realm, overseeing the construction of an aqueduct system that fed clean water to his capital and its surrounding suburbs, while actively maintaining and repairing the over 40 forts in his territory, ensuring he had touchpoints to spot the next Mughal invasion. Under his patronage, both Hindu and Muslim arts flourished, and palaces and mosques were erected to increase the prestige of Ahmednagar. Over the next few years, the truce with the Mughals was predictably broken, and fighting continued once more. In 1616, Ambar suffered his first major defeat against the imperial host, who used a system of trenches to entrap the Ahmednagari cavalry and devastate them with artillery. This loss gave the Mughals a stable foothold in Ahmednagar once more, and from there the situation continued to snowball. The Bijapur Sultan smelled blood in the water. Previously he had been an ally to Ambar in the war against imperial aggression, but by 1618 it became clear the Adil Shah intended to collaborate with the Mughals. Seeing their conquest of the Deccan as an inevitability, he conspired to destroy Ahmednagar for the preservation of his own realm. The noose was tightening around Malik's neck, and he knew he had to act swiftly, lest he be wiped from the pages of history. A spree of Bagigiri raiding in Bijapuri territory forced an allied Mughal Bijapuri army to meet Ambar on his own terms. On September 10, 1624, Ambar chose to make his stand in a fort within the village of Batwadi. The village stood on a hilly bluff overlooking the western shore of Lake Kalindi. It was the rainy season, so as the enemy's massive army approached, Ambar ordered the lake's dams struck and the lowlands flooded, turning the ground at the Mughals' feet into a thick, muddy bog. As he had done his whole career, Ambar turned his enemies' superior numbers and heavier units against themselves. Artillery, war elephants and infantry were wholly immobile in the wet hellscape that the Malik had created for them. Night after night, his Marathi cavalry sallied down the hillside while shrouded in darkness, destroying provisions and picking off the enemy. For the Mughal soldiers, the effect was thoroughly demoralizing. Gripped by terror and starvation, large chunks of the army defected to Ambar, who welcomed them warmly. With his army swelling and the Mughals shrinking, Ambar adjusted his doctrine and began attacking with wholesale cavalry assaults by day, devastating a foe that remained stuck in the mire and psychologically broken. Thoroughly beaten and incredibly humiliated, the Mughals were forced to retreat after sustaining heavy losses. Not only had Ambar once more humbled the mighty empire, he had foiled the attempts of his fellow Deccani Sultanate to collaborate in his destruction, and ensured the independence of his realm. The Battle of Batwadi would be his greatest and last achievement. 2 years later, Malik Ambar passed away at the ripe old age of 80. Unfortunately, Ahmednagar's rebel spirit died with him. Ambar's son succeeded him as regent minister, but lacked his father's military mind. In 1636, the forces of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan finally annexed Ahmednagar, ending over 30 years of war. Nevertheless, the legacy of Malik Ambar is still one to be admired. A military leader of exceptional skill, he consistently outwitted an empire he was thoroughly outnumbered and outgunned by for decades. No Mughal overlord, no matter how many dark fantasy paintings he commissioned, would ever get the best of Ambar. His physical footprint still remains in the Deccan today. The modern city of Aurangabad is in and of itself a testament to this, where the aqueducts that he built during his reign still stand, as does the austere tomb that he was buried in. By and large, they are a reminder of a time when an African ruled the heart of India. We always have more stories to tell, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button. We would like to express our gratitude to our Patreon supporters and channel members who make the creation of our videos possible. Now you can also support us by buying our merchandise via the link in the description. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.